Okay, so now we kind of understand a little bit of what a break-even point is, what contribution margin is. We're going to build a contribution margin income statement. Remember, just the generally speaking, an income statement is basically revenues minus expenses. However, because we're building a contribution margin income statement, remember contribution margin is the sales minus the variable cost. We're going to build a little differently. We're going to take the revenues or the sales minus my variable cost and then subtract my fixed cost. Because what I'm going to do is in the interim, I'm a subtotal. I'm going to have revenues minus variable cost equals my contribution margin and then subtract out my fixed cost to get my operating income, to end up with my operating income. So let's look at this problem here. It says Head First Company plans to sell 5,000 bicycle helmets at $75 each in the coming year. Product costs include direct materials per helmet of $30, direct labor per helmet of $8, variable factory overhead per helmet of $4, and the total fixed factory overhead of $20,000. So step one says to calculate the total variable cost per unit. Total variable cost per unit. The total variable cost per unit is just literally adding up all of my variable costs on a per unit basis. So I've got $30 plus direct labor would also be a variable cost, plus my 4, and then actually I should have typed it out here, but I'm also going to need to add, I'm going to put it here, this variable selling expense is $3 per helmet, and that's a variable selling expense I also need to include. So I'm going to go back and type that in. So change it here. Let's see here, equals, oops, these are apparently not formatted as dollars. So okay, sorry, the formatting was a little off there. So all I did was add together to get my total variable cost per unit. All I did was add 30, 8 for the direct labor, 4, and then 3 for the sales commission down here to get a total variable cost per unit of 45. I guess I could have just put this right here for the answer to number 1. Number 2 says calculate the total fixed expense for the year. And notice it doesn't say per unit, it just says the total fixed expense. I've got 2 numbers to add. I've got the obvious one here, the total fixed factory overhead of 20,000, but then also it says there's also a fixed selling and administrative expense of 29.5. So I'm going to add for my total fixed expense for the year, I'm going to add the 20,000 plus 20,000 plus my 29,500. I don't know what Excel is doing right now, equals 20,000 plus 20,500 is 49.5. So that's my total fixed cost. All right, so that's the second part of this problem. The third one says prepare a contribution margin statement for this Head First Company for the coming year. So a contribution margin income statement. Contribution margin income statement. So like any other income statement, it starts off with my revenues or my sales. So I'll start with that, sales. And my sales for this year, it tells me how many units I'm going to sell. It tells me I'm going to sell 5,000 units. 5,000 units at a price of $75 each. So I can figure out my total sales by simply taking 5,000 times 75 to get my total sales of $375,000. Next, since this is a contribution margin statement, like I mentioned over here, I got my revenues. Now I need to take out my variable cost. So my variable cost, I don't have a variable cost in total, but I do have a total per unit. My variable cost per unit is 45. Since I'm selling 5,000 units, I can just take the 5,000 units times the $45 per unit with a variable cost to get 225. Now, just a subtotal, but I can find my contribution margin. So my contribution margin, I simply take my revenues minus my variable cost. is $150,000. So there's my contribution margin. Now I can take out my fixed cost, my total. I don't need to put them on separate lines. My total fixed cost, which I found up here of 49.5, so that I can now get my operating income. 150 minus 49.5 is my operating income of $100,500. Now, something else we can do, and this will be used for later in the chapter, so I'm going to go ahead and do it now. As this is my total, these are all my totals. So this is my total sales, my total variable cost, my total contribution margin, total fixed cost, and total operating income. I can find these numbers on a per unit basis as well. We don't usually, although you can technically divide anything by the units, we don't usually utilize too much down here in the fixed costs and operating, but we do oftentimes want to know what's my sales price per unit, what's my variable cost per unit, and what's my contribution margin per unit. So all I would do to figure that out is take 375 divided by the 5,000 units for the sales. I know that's how we got it in the first place, is 75. And the variable cost, the same thing, 225 divided by 5,000. And then for my contribution margin, I'm going to take the 150,000 divided by 5,000. What information does this give me? Well, this tells me that for every unit that I sell, I have $30 worth of that unit. $30 of the sale at $75 sales price goes towards covering my fixed cost. So every time I make a sale, I can know that every time that I make a $75 helmet sale, that $30 worth of that is going towards my covering my fixed cost. We'll stop that video here for now.